it does seem to be wide open, both top and bottom. So, we've decided to come up with and start off by giving the viewers our bottom 5 from 10th to 6th position in the league. I know from my own side of it, I don't know whether I gave Wexford grace for no good reason, but I have Cabinteely to finish bottom this season. I just think they'll be suffering from a big hangover from last year. They've also had the departure of a good few players, and despite the fact that they have a good coaching ticket there, for the want of a better word, I do think that they'll finish bottom of the league, with Wexford just in front of them. Treaty United was one that I was mulling over for the weekend. Michael Hearn had asked me on the show where I thought they would finish. I told him I hadn't made my mind up between 7th and 8th, but judging by squad depths and the likes of other sides and the likes of Cove, I did think that they'd finish in 8th position. Hopefully I'm wrong in a positive sense, but not so sure that I will be. And then there was one where Athlone Town, I think, even though they have lofty ambitions, some players saying that they were going for a title push, I don't think that'll be where they'll end up. And I think 7th position would be possibly where they go, and it would probably be an improvement nearly on recent seasons for Athlone, despite the fact that they obviously feel like they have bigger ambitions this season. And just to miss out on the playoffs, then I have Cove Ramblers, and they just missed out at heartache last year as well, in terms of their league finish, because people seem to gloss over the fact that if Shane Duggan hadn't scored that last minute goal, which ended up getting Galway into the playoffs, that Cove would have actually replaced Cabinteely in the playoffs. And in fairness, St. Cohen's Park is a very tough place to go. They probably will be thereabouts challenging. Noel, we'll start with you on this one and your bottom 5. What way have you shaped the bottom 5?
Yeah, I've really gone out on a limb here, and I've gone for Athlone to finish bottom.
That's it. I
knew Jason couldn't do it, so I said I better do it. But no, I think what they're trying to do is unrealistic. I look at where they were last year. We've spoken about the players they've signed. I think it's not sustainable. If they don't start too well, I think they'll come under pressure financially as well. I'm not so sure those players will be with them for a long time. I think they might end up reverting to a more local team again. And, we saw what happened with that local team last year. I think it's very difficult to come from the bottom 2 to make yourself promotion hopefuls, and of all places, I think Limerick, and being from Limerick, we've seen that ourselves and seen that it's not really a sustainable way to go. I think Athlone are following that similar model, and I don't think it's a good idea for them. My prediction for 9th is my old club, Wexford. I didn't want to put too much pressure on them by telling them that they'd finish too high up the table. I think they're going to have a better run than last year. I think, in fairness to them, the fact that that points deduction was hanging over them for so long, I think it affected them certainly later on in the season. There's nothing worse than thinking that you're going to lose 6 hard-won points that you thought you had. I thought the whole thing dragged on way too long, and it did certainly impact on them, but they had some very good results. I know they're stronger in terms player-wise this year, and with Harry Kenny in there as well, I do expect him to do quite okay. I went for your team that you predicted to the bottom to come next. That's Cabinteely, and you did mention the reason Coney as well. I think that that they will do okay because of the wily campaigners they have at the top. And you're right, they have lost a lot of players. But I think the fact that they are in Dublin, I think that there's always a kind of an excess, for want of a better word, of players. They have access into that Leinster Senior League. They'd know where there was good players. They'd always unearthed a couple of overachievers, if you like. So from that point of view, I think that they won't finish at the bottom. I've stuck Treaty in next. I would have found it hard to let them go down any lower. I think that, they have a lot of momentum going into the season. There has to be a lot of enthusiasm there. There's 26 players in the squad, and look, the window opens again as such in June, and I think that they will have an opportunity maybe to bring a couple of players in as well, and that's where I'm hoping that they will finish. And I have the same prediction for sixth as yourself in Cove. I think you're right about St. Coleman's Park. They're always going to pick up points there. They'll get a few good results away from home. They're always a difficult team to beat, and from that point of view, I can see them being comfortably in sixth place of that bottom five, if you like.
Yeah, we had a jumbled up selection, Noel, but we have similar views on the actual teams that will be in the bottom five. Jason, the spotlight's now on yourself, and from 10th to 6th, please.
I didn't copy you, Adrian, as you know, but very similar. Same as yourself. The bottom three for me: Cabinteely, Wexford, and my heart is pulling Treaty up into 8th, which would be a respectable finish for them. Athlone next, and I think personally it's UCD that might just miss out. I've tipped Cove for the playoffs, so UCD would be in 6th, Athlone 7th, Treaty 8th position, Wexford and Cabinteely at the bottom.
Yeah, we're struggling to decide how to do this section, but we'll say we might go with 2 and 2 for the playoffs. You have 4 playoff positions, so we go 5th and 4th, and go from there. While I gather my notes, I can't actually remember as such, but I'm going to jump. Noel, you'll be more organised than me, but I'm going to jump into you first and ask you who you think will finish 5th and 4th in the division.
Okay, well, I have UCD to finish 5th. And while they have lost a few players and held on to a few players, I assume they're getting another influx of players like in June, all their first year scholarships. I'm sure that they'll be looking to get them involved, and they are going to be very fit and very strong, and they have a fairly large playing pool, even though they mightn't be household names. And I think over the season they'll probably garner enough points to get into that 5th and final playoff place. In 4th place, and I've already said this earlier on in earlier podcasts, I think it's going to be Cork City. People would probably see them as challenging for the league. I think they're going to find this league a little bit more difficult than they realise. While they have signed a few good players, I think it's a kind of a mindset or a mentality thing. I think I haven't seen it yet, and I hope I'm wrong, but they certainly need to be up for a battle, and they'll realise that every single game in this first division is a massive battle. And if you're not up for it, well, then you're not going to get a whole lot out of it. But they still have some quality players, and they probably have enough of quality to get enough results to keep them in those playoff places.
I thought I was doing Cork a great service last week, Noel, when I was talking about them. Having a positive season. I thought that having a positive season was going to be around 4th position, and you thought they'd underachieve. So you definitely had higher loftier ambitions for Cork City than I had. But I knew there was a reason why I didn't want you to go first, because now it looks like I'm just piggybacking off you. But it's UCD that I had in 5th, along with Cork then in 4th, because I think like yourself, there is obviously going to be massive expectation in Cork. But I just don't think the quality matches that in terms of getting into maybe the top 3 positions. But surely getting into the playoffs after such a turbulent year last year would be seen as a success. And UCD just being UCD in this division, no matter what team they have out, I think they could have a team of junior players out in that club would somehow manage to get into the playoffs as well. But Jason, what's your own view on that in terms of 5th and 4th in the division?
For me, Adrian, I think Cove will get in there. You mentioned St. Coleman's Park, but they have a lot of experience in the squad still. On the back of a good season last year, they'll want to do well for Stuart Ashton, I'm sure. And I just think they'll have a bit too much cleverness over the course of the season for UCD. I'd have Bray in fourth. As I said, a lot of quality in the team, built for this division. And I think that'll be fourth and fifth. It'll be Bray and Cove.
Yeah, I think the only reason I hadn't put Cove into the playoff places is because we obviously know about Darren Murphy and Ian Turner and ex-Limerick players, but a lot of it will depend on what type of form they get those players in as well, because we could see both sides of each of those players when they were with Limerick FC. Obviously, we saw the good and the bad. Jason, we won't go away from you yet, Jason. We'll go for your third and second positions and predictions for the year.
I'd be like yourself, Adrian. I think the playoffs would be a good return for Cork City. I think they'd be aiming a little bit too high if they're expecting to go up as champions. I think third spot into the playoffs will suit them fine. It'll be a good return for them. And I suppose then it's down to the game on Sunday. I'm tipping Galway to beat Shelbourne, so I'll stick with that over the season. I'll go for Galway as champions because I'm a big John Caulfield fan. I'm a believer in his results. It won't be for the one to try and to have the quality, to have the full-time environment. And look, I think they'll do it. So Galway champion, Shelbourne second, and Cork third.
Yeah, I don't know if it's my dislike for Shelbourne overall from when I was a young age from watching them, and maybe watching on in envy in some cases before they were in the first division back in 2007. But I for some reason I didn't feel that all was well down there, as we discussed at the end of last season. I'm not sure if Ian Morris will get the best out of them. I know they have a full-time setup, but I just have a feeling that Shelbourne might finish third, and it's just a hunch. There's not really anything to base it on, bar the fact that I do think Bray Wanderers will finish second ahead of them. I think Bray will sandwich in between both Galway and Shelbourne, and I do think Galway, with the quality they have and the manager they have in John Caulfield, and obviously the interest and dedication he has, and the example he will set for the players, I do think that Galway will be champions. Noel, your own opinion on the top three?
Yeah, the top three. I put Bray in third. I think they're a real steady bet. I think they're going to be very consistent. They have a lot of experience, and they're kind of under the radar, if you like. I don't think that there's a lot of expectation for them. Obviously it'll be, within the club it's there, but on the outside, obviously, it'll be all about Shelbourne, Galway, because of John Caulfield, and Cork City. In terms of the top two, then I've gone for Shelbourne to win the league. I think they've done it before. In their history, they've bounced back. I'm looking at the squads. I've no doubt that John Caulfield is the best manager there, and he'll do a massive amount of work. But just looking at the squads, I think they just have more firepower, if you like, and more options and more depth and more goals in the Shelbourne squad. And you're right that there's a bit of pressure on Ian Morris, but I think if they can get off to a good start, I think they'll be very, very hard to beat. And I think the reason why Galway will come up a little bit short is because the squad is just a little bit thin, and certainly a little bit thin in the final third of the pitch.
Yeah, actually, Jason, I forgot to mention it to you before, but Francini Lombato, a man who we gave so much talk to on the show, unfortunate leg break last week, so he's going to be out for a while. That's a big loss for Galway, all right.
Oh, he's Adrian, and we wish him our best. He's a young player, and it's never nice to see a leg break, and he will be a loss to Galway. We went through a couple of young players over the weeks. Not the household names, I suppose, that everyone would be familiar with, but Francini was one we picked out, and hopefully has a bright future in the game.
Yeah, there you have it, folks. That's the predictions anyway for the season on all fronts, and you'll be able to see them on Sporting Limerick website, Facebook and Twitter in writing tomorrow, so there's no hiding then and no way out if people don't watch. We'll have all three up on the Sporting Limerick social media outlets. Big weekend ahead. We obviously wish Treaty United the best of luck on both fronts. You have the women's team starting, and they're the curtain raiser on Saturday at 2 p.m. against Bohemians, a team they had a good record against last year, and hopefully that continues. And obviously the senior men's team playing Bray in the Carlisle grounds on Sunday. So best of luck to both sides into them. And thanks very much, guys, for your contribution. And hopefully we'll be dissecting a positive result, which we obviously would probably be thinking would be a draw from Sunday's game, but who knows? And hopefully we'll be dissecting a positive result next week for Treaty United. Thank you very much.